Discover how one little girl's kindness transformed a homeless widow's life in just one day. Ellie skipped down the sun-drenched sidewalk, her backpack bouncing against her spine. Today, she had just finished reading about brave queens and magical lands, painting her walk home with vibrant dreams. Each step was fueled by the stories in her mind, until she neared the park. That's where her routine derailed. A woman sat alone on a bench, her face marked with time and sorrow. Ellie was drawn in by the tattered belongings that surrounded her, shadows of a life that had once been bright. Marjorie, the widow, was invisible to everyone around her, or so it seemed as footsteps hurried past. Ellie's heart ached. The warm sandwich she had stashed was suddenly heavy in her hand. The other kids at school would scoff at her if they knew she was even thinking about talking to a person like Marjorie. They preferred shiny things, the kind that sparkled and made the right statements. But Ellie, filled with compassion, felt a pull stronger than the pressure to fit in. As she walked up to the bench, every internal voice warned her. What would they say? Yet she just couldn't walk past. "Here," she said, offering the sandwich with trembling fingers. Marjorie's eyes flickered with surprise. They began to talk, the sound of their voices creating a fragile bridge between their worlds. Marjorie shared stories of her vibrant past as an artist, her voice dancing as she described colors and canvases, joy and laughter. Ellie envisioned the woman reclaiming her lost identity, the dream of seeing Marjorie in galleries again painted in bright hues. Then doubt crept in, a dark shadow. At school the next day, hushed whispers followed Ellie like a nightmare. Why would she hang out with someone like that? The words cut deeper than she expected, a shiver of shame pricking at her. Her heart raced. Did they not see Marjorie? Couldn't they feel the vibrancy beneath the layers of wear? Ellie's mouth turned dry. She struggled with the weight of her choice. Would fitting in be worth sacrificing her compassion? Ellie's desire to help propelled her forward, igniting a candle of hope in Marjorie. Let's create a piece for charity, she proposed one afternoon, the sunlight spilling over them in encouragement. Marjorie hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. What if no one cares? But Ellie's enthusiasm warmed the air around them. Marjorie agreed, but soon self-doubt emerged again, squeezing the breath from her chest like a steady vice. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the charity day approached, Ellie felt desperation tinged with determination. They faced hurdles, skepticism from volunteers, the challenge of accessing art supplies and internal battles that churned within Marjorie. Ellie's chest tightened with each spoken word of doubt from others. The void between them and the world felt impossibly wide. Ellie's heart raced. Could they actually pull it off? Then the day arrived. Excitement clashed with anxiety. Just as the unveiling drew near, an unexpected incident left Ellie questioning everything. Marjorie's spirit was frail, and the shadows lingered just outside their door, the very ones they had fought to escape. With everything hanging in the balance, Ellie's breath caught, tightening the knot in her stomach. Will courage prevail against a world that still saw Marjorie as invisible? Could kindness rise against the weight of mockery? The stakes had never felt so high, and Ellie was left teetering on the brink, desperate for a sign that hope could conquer fear. The sun streamed brightly on the day of the charity unveiling, illuminating the makeshift art gallery they had created in Marjorie's cramped room. At first glance, it looked dazzling. The colorful pieces reflected both women's hearts and aspirations. Yet beneath that vibrancy, Ellie felt a tumultuous storm brewing within her. Marjorie had grown quieter as the showcase neared, her artistic spirit dimmed by doubt. Rallying her courage, Ellie adjusted the display of paintings, stealing glances at Marjorie. The woman's face was a mask of uncertainty. What if they hate it? She whispered, her voice fragile and trembling, a raw echo of the despair they had fought against. They won't, Ellie insisted, her own voice stronger than she felt inside. She wanted to reach through the shadows of doubt and assure Marjorie that beauty could still rise. But each whisper of skepticism floated through her mind, reminding her of the sneers at school. Fitting in was designed to obliterate the unconventional, to squash kindness when it dared to defy the norm. The gallery buzzed with a nervous energy as guests began to arrive. Ellie took a deep breath, masking her own anxiety. Marjorie stood beside her, and together they faced the swirling crowd, the past weighing heavily on Marjorie's shoulders. Ellie counted faces filled with judgment. The pristine and polished children from school who had once mocked her flashed before her eyes. They glided past, their noses upturned as they stepped into the frame of the art they deemed beneath them. But something shifted as warm smiles bloomed on strangers' faces. Ellie's eyes sparkled when she noticed a couple admiring Marjorie's work. Each brushstroke transformed from canvas to personal story, a journey reflected in the vibrant swirls of blue and gold. "This reminds me of summer by the ocean," one woman exclaimed, her eyes twinkling with genuine appreciation, lifting a weight off Ellie's heart. As more onlookers stepped closer, Marjorie's demeanor began to change, the flicker of insecurity gradually igniting into a flame of recognition. Ellie watched, spellbound, as the wall of despair crumbled, revealing a joy she had long wished for Marjorie. But just when it seemed they might prevail, the door swung open at the back, and from the shadows emerged figures bathed in disdain, the very classmates Ellie had dreaded facing. They swept into the room, laughter dripping in sarcasm. "What do we have here? An art show for the homeless?" One of them sneered, his voice slicing through the moment like a shard of ice. Ellie's heart sank. The fleeting warmth of acceptance vacated the room, replaced by an ice-cold pressure. She felt Marjorie stiffen beside her, the fragile confidence unraveling as she timidly retreated behind Ellie. Ellie's mind raced, torn between defending their hard work and buckling under the weight of exposure. In that moment, a new resolve ignited within her. This wasn't just about Marjorie or the art. It was about empowering both of them to face judgment unwaveringly. Ellie turned, planted her feet, and stared down her classmates. "This is more than you'll ever understand," she declared, her voice trembling but firm. The contradiction hung in the air, calling them to recognize a truth she had glimpsed amidst her fears. Kindness had power, and it was worth standing for. Uncertain whispers batted around the gallery, a clash of intimidation and bravery reverberating through the room. Ellie stood awkwardly in the middle, feeling the transition not just for herself, but for Marjorie, who now watched with fierce curiosity emerging from below the surface of fright. Marjorie had a choice, to retreat or reclaim her voice. What she didn't know yet was that this encounter would redefine the path they both walked. Would Marjorie embrace this chance to break free from her invisible shackles? Or would the mocking laughter prove too heavy a burden to bear? The crowd hung in tension, waiting to see what would happen next, and as Ellie turned to Marjorie, the pivotal moment hung starkly in the balance. Would they rise, or would they fall? The laughter echoed like a cruel bell as Ellie stared at her classmates who reveled in the discomfort they had created. Fear coiled in her stomach, threatening to constrict her voice, but she held firm. The trembling air around them crackled with anticipation, a battleground formed from the tension of their contrasting worlds. Marjorie's small stature behind her felt heavier with every judgmental gaze. Yet amidst the chaos, Ellie felt a subtle shift within herself, a burgeoning realization that her courage could spark something in Marjorie. As the silence stretched painfully, she turned slowly back to face Marjorie. The flicker of doubt in her friend's eyes was palpable. "Together," Ellie mouthed, grounding herself in the understanding that neither of them was alone in this moment. Marjorie's grip on the art display tightened as if she were gathering strength from the canvases. Each piece represented years of heartache and hope, and Ellie could see a change dawning in her expression. The crudely mocking laughter filtered out, eclipsed by the warmth of attentive spectators drawn in by the sincerity of the artwork. Those who appreciated the art became a lens through which she viewed the situation, a reminder that not every observer held scorn. "Why are you so afraid of being kind?" Ellie straightened, addressing the mocking crowd, feeling a fierce pulse of indignation swell within her. It was as if her words had summoned their vulnerability. Behind their bravado lay insecurities they masked with derision. Their laughter faltered, and for a brief moment, confusion flickered in their eyes. Marjorie, emboldened by Ellie's words, took a breath and stepped forward. "This isn't just a show for you to laugh at," she began, her voice quivering when she first spoke but gaining fervor with each word. "These paintings are my stories, filled with my pain and healing. You may not understand that, but I do." The timid artist unveiled a deeper sense of self that Ellie had nurtured through countless discussions over shared meals in that cramped room. Ellie's heart thundered in her chest, both proud and terrified as she watched Marjorie take ownership of her narrative. There was no way to predict the reaction of those watching. This was their first step into the light, facing their fears together. As the classmates exchanged glances, some rolled their eyes while others seemed momentarily mesmerized. Ellie's eyes darted to Marjorie, who now stood wider in stance, rising amid adversity. "Art is vulnerability. It's how I feel. If I can show that, then so can you." Marjorie's discovery of her voice, to express herself amid ridicule, ignited something visceral in Ellie. She had faced down the derision of her peers not just for herself, but for Marjorie. Confrontation transformed into connection. It was a silent negotiation between acceptance and rejection, where the stakes were their dignity. Yet as the crowd began to murmur, their attention shifting back and forth like the ocean tides, Ellie sensed a looming fork in the road. Even if they took a step forward, would they be met with genuine acceptance or enduring mockery? The anticipation lingered, thick like fog, and the sound of laughter faded into a digression of voices buzzing with a mix of admiration and disdain. What will this mean for us? Ellie wondered, her mind racing ahead, trying to anticipate the path that the brave front they had created might carve. Would they be able to carve out a new identity amidst peers who had only ever seen them as lesser than? The decision hung like a pendulum, oscillating between possibility and fear. As Ellie committed to this newfound alliance, her heart thrashed against the storm of uncertainty. Marjorie's smile flickered at the corner of her lips, a flicker that ignited Ellie's determination to push forward. "Let's show them who we truly are." The thought was one of defiance, a shimmer of hope that danced in her mind. Ellie could feel change swirling around them, waiting to be embraced. But would the moment slip through their fingers, or would they harness this spark? The crowd responded with an intensity that mirrored the storm brewing within Ellie, creating a new tension that hummed in the air. What awaited them as this confrontation remained tangled in potential? The next step beckoned, laden not just with the prospect of loss but of undeniable growth. What would they discover about themselves next? An electric silence engulfed the space, stretching like an elastic band ready to snap. Ellie could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing against her chest, but she held her resolve. Marjorie stood beside her, no longer the small figure hiding behind her insecurities. The camaraderie they forged in those seconds draped over them like a protective cloak, shielding both from the societal disapproval looming around their vulnerable display. With renewed determination, Ellie stepped closer to Marjorie. "We can't waver now," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "This is our chance to change the narrative." Random thoughts surged through her mind, everything from the heartfelt discussions about art they'd shared, to the gleam of possibility seen in the firelight of shared dreams. Marjorie's breath matched Ellie's rhythm. What if they laugh again? What if they don't get it? The doubt quivered in her voice, an echo of Ellie's own insecurities. But Ellie could sense the flicker of bravery igniting within her friend. It was an ember of transformation that must not be extinguished. "Then we try harder. If they can't see beauty in our truth, that's on them," Ellie replied, channeling an assertiveness she'd never practiced before. It was a newfound power, not just in words, but in the strength of vulnerability. placing faith in the authenticity of their shared experience. The murmurings of the crowd shifted again, leaning toward curiosity rather than contempt. Some pairs of eyes softened as recognition played across their faces. There was the unmistakable glimmer of realization that Marjorie's art resonated far deeper than mere visuals. It sang songs of resilience, of overcoming, of shared humanity. Would these realizations unite them or provoke further disparagement? As Marjorie stepped forward, Ellie harmonized her own presence with her friends. Together they embodied the essence of defiance, not against their peers but against the fear that threatened to drown their voices. Each painting holds a story, Marjorie asserted, her voice gaining steadiness. When you mock them, you mock us and all those who feel this way. Marjorie's newfound articulation caught the audience off guard. Ellie could feel the temperatures rise, no longer solely fueled by disdain, but spiced with an aroma of empathy. She watched as several faces transitioned from apathy to contemplation, and saw the genuine expressions of interest slowly dawning among the crowd. Yet the internal battle continued to rage. Could a single moment of vulnerability overturn years of scrutiny? Ellie's pulse quickened, pressing her against the very walls of her own past. Flashbacks of her own torment swelled and receded like waves battering against the shore, while her gaze never left Marjorie. They had shared laughter and pain, uncertainty and dreams over countless late-night conversations. Now those moments became weapons in the face of the enemy. Fear. As they stood before their classmates, a newfound realization surfaced. Courage had emerged through commitment, leaving them no option but to be brave. The antagonistic energy morphed into something pregnant with possibilities as the girls shaped their identities, no longer defined by the judgments of others but by the artful expression of their truths. But even amongst this whirlwind of revelation, a single question gnawed at Ellie's psyche. What if, despite their courageous stand, an unforeseen backlash awaited them? A sudden voice sliced through the thickened air. Well, congrats, artists. What do you expect us to do with your amateur nonsense? Is that your big revelation? Ellie's heart sank, the sharpness of the words determined to resonate like an unwanted truth. The laughter threatened to return, and the tension in the room rippled anew, a stark reminder of the precariousness of their victory. It had begun. A confrontation. Would they crumble, or could the transformative power of their connection withstand the storm? Something more fundamental was at stake now. The next moment would demand a resolution to the question that loomed over them, poised between acceptance and rejection. And it was that unyielding anticipation that threw yet another challenge onto their path. Would their growth lead to triumph, or would fear redefine them once more? Ellie felt her cheeks flush as the jeers cascaded through the crowd like cold water, each drop intensifying the fear swelling within her. Doubt crept back, threatening to tangle her resolve. She could almost hear the distant echoes of the taunts from years past, the laughter still fresh in her memory. Yet as she glanced at Marjorie, she saw a flicker of defiance mirrored in her friend's eyes. Amateur nonsense? Marjorie's voice, shaky but unyielding, broke through her reverie. This isn't about being an expert. It's about sharing our truth. When was the last time you poured your heart out on canvas? Ellie held her breath, surprised by Marjorie's sudden boldness. The crowd shifted, uneasy, their confidence taken aback by the fierce promptness in Marjorie's challenge. Some faces wore expressions of discomfort, others, curiosity. Each moment pulsed with the potential for growth, for both Ellie and Marjorie and even those who stood judging them. Look, Ellie interjected, mustering her own voice, a new determination rising within her. It's easy to mock from your seat, but what does that accomplish? All we're asking is to recognize the stories woven into each piece. The barbed laughter began to soften, the sharp edges dulled as more voices joined in discussion. That's right, one girl from the back chimed in. Everyone starts somewhere. Her agreement sent a ripple of encouragement through the room like a spark igniting dry tinder. With every heartbeat, Ellie felt her own resolve coalesce into something stronger. Perhaps this moment wasn't merely about the art, It was about asserting themselves in a world that thrived on judging others' vulnerabilities. Each word exchanged began to weave a collective thread of solidarity, even from unexpected corners. "What if we fail?" Marjorie whispered, a hint of concern surfacing. The bravery from moments earlier faced the challenge of reality again. "What if we don't?" Ellie countered, her voice colored with conviction. "You showed courage today by sharing your story. That in itself is a victory." Marjorie's expression shifted from uncertainty to contemplation, as if grappling with the illumination of self-acceptance. "You're right," she conceded, her confidence bulking up. "This isn't about them. It's about us being whole." Ellie's heart thundered in her chest as another classmate broke the silence, this time with genuine curiosity. "Can you tell us more about why you created those pieces?" The invitation was a welcome rift in the animosity, a doorway allowing them to walk into a space of understanding. Marjorie stepped forward, encouraged by the subtle shift of dynamic. Her voice steadied, weaving together a narrative that revealed layers of their experiences, of anxiety, hope, and resilience. Ellie found herself equally animated, complementing Marjorie's exposition with tales of their late-night brainstorming sessions, revealing pieces of themselves they had previously guarded. With each shared story, the insecurities that had once smothered Ellie and Marjorie morphed into communal understanding at their most vulnerable levels. It became less about defending art or the risks of ridicule, and more about the empowerment of self-expression, transforming doubt into a joint celebration of human experience. Yet, as they found their footing, the tension still lingered. A storm brewed within the crowd, intertwining their feelings and narratives with spiteful skepticism. Would this moment solidify their growth, or would it falter before the onslaught of harsh judgments still present? "Your art can't possibly change anything," someone muttered from the back. The comment struck like a slap, drawing Ellie's ire. She felt the stirrings of anger bubbling up, a confusing mix of indignation and empathy. Did these judgments stem from pain, perhaps unaddressed truths from the accuser's own life? "Maybe one day we'll find the bravery to face our own truths too," Ellie replied, her voice steadier than she felt. It hung in the air, challenged and challenged again, resonating with the timbre of an unyielding spirit. But even in that moment of clarity, she couldn't shake a looming fear. What if self-expression did nothing to change a single perception? What if this vulnerability laid them bare only to be trampled on? The crowd grew quiet, heavy with anticipation, poised to react. Ellie's heart raced, caught between the fear of vulnerability and the hope of connection. What would they choose next? A growing bond through shared storytelling, or retreat to the safety of silence and judgment? The very air felt electric, charged with an unspoken challenge that waited to unfurl. A tangible tension hung in the air as the murmurs of the crowd shifted from taunts to something unexpectedly softer. It was a delicate dance between hesitation and hope, and Ellie stood on that precipice, her heart thrumming erratically. Marjorie began to speak again, her voice emerging like a beacon in the fog. "Art isn't just paint on canvas. It's a way to express things we can't say with words. It gives voice to our fears, our dreams." Each phrase seemed to stitch a new layer of confidence around Ellie, tinged with an awareness of her own reluctance to be seen fully. The clash of judgment and understanding played out across the varied expressions of the audience, and Ellie realized she wasn't merely defending their art. She was inviting others to plunge into something real. "Exactly," Ellie added, her voice rising sharply with conviction. "How can we grow if we refuse to confront what challenges us? We can't evolve if we cower." Ellie felt the weight of her past buckle under the force of her present. Each word felt like unearthing a piece of herself that had long been buried under layers of fear. The silence now enveloped the room, not as an oppressive testament to judgment, but as a moment of reflection. There was no denying the flicker of change, a connection forming where doubt had reigned. But just then, the same dispassionate voice cut through the fragile atmosphere again. "This is all just fluff. A distraction. You really think your art matters? To who?" A wave of resentment pulsed from the corner, but this time, instead of faltering, Ellie felt a fierce flame of determination. Was this disbelief rooted in failings that she too had once harbored? The carefully cultivated walls of her own insecurities slipped away, and she found herself stepping toward that challenging voice, an avatar of her past. "What matters is that we try," Ellie replied, searching for the right words as she stood facing the occupant of doubt. "Isn't struggle inherent to every creative endeavor? Every masterpiece is born from the desire to see and be seen." Ellie's gaze fixed on the critic for a heartbeat longer. She wasn't merely arguing against popular belief. She was fueling a personal fire that demanded recognition. The moment swelled with intensity, like a heavy tide ready to crash. Marjorie's voice chimed in again. "We must honor our stories even in the face of dismissal. What if sharing can light a path for someone else? What if it helps us all to confront our truths?" As she spoke, Ellie felt a swell of understanding ripple through her, a blossoming knowledge that this confrontation was also a lesson in resilience. Each word that had once felt hollow, shattered and reformed into a clearer vision of their message. Art wasn't confined to a gallery. It lived in the delicate connections made in moments of vulnerability. The classmate who had first questioned them sighed, her expression no longer hostile. "All right, I get it. But what if it still flops? What if no one cares?" Ellie took a deep breath, the moment becoming sharper as her mind raced through possibilities. It was in this question, where doubt transformed into intrinsic motivation. What if we fail? It won't be the end. We will learn and come back stronger. But what if we don't try? That's where we risk losing everything. See, Ellie realized, growth could only begin in the face of very real fear. It pushed through the raindrops of doubt to create an urgency for authenticity. As the crowd began to offer tentative murmurs of agreement, Ellie felt a burgeoning belief settle within her. They were all in the same boat, weathering this sea together. Then Ellie's gaze slid back to Marjorie, both a partner in this journey and a quintessential part of it. "What will this look like next time?" she whispered, igniting a new conversation in her mind. Where would their voices travel from here? Would they write and paint with the defiance of the newfound community? Just as clarity began to take hold in her heart, the crowd erupted into chaotic chatter. Some grasped for reconciliation, while others stewed in resentment. The space shifted again. Ellie felt a tightening in her throat, suddenly uncertain. The very platform that had promised clarity now seemed to tremble beneath her a second time. There was an itch of excitement mingled with fear, and, as she stood ready to embrace what came next, she couldn't help but wonder if their journey would take a turn for the better or if they'd be thrust back into hiding once again. In that moment, the question wasn't just about art anymore. It was a matter of heart, of purpose. What would they build from this vulnerability, this revelation? The next choice waited, eager and looming in silence, like a storm ready to descend. The growing urgency in the room felt almost palpable. As the chatter intensified, Ellie realized that uncertainty now thrummed beneath the surface of the collective excitement. Each voice added to the cacophony, but she felt like an island amidst a raging sea. Her mind raced. This was not merely a platform for expression. It had become a litmus test for her commitment, and one that she desperately wanted to pass. What if she faltered now? Ellie caught a glimpse of Marjorie in the swirling haze of faces, her expression encouraging yet expectant. What came next depended on her. The realization sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. It was time to embody the courage she had spoken of. With a fast-paced heartbeat, she took a step forward, both thrilling and terrifying. "Look," she began, raising her voice to cut through the din. "This isn't just about what we create for ourselves. It's about the marks we make on each other's lives. It's raw. It's unearthed emotions and shared experiences. It's about connection." The audience's chatter dampened, focus shifting towards her once more. Ellie could feel her palms grow moist, but she kept pressing forward. She drew from that reservoir of determination she'd uncovered during Marjorie's inspirational talk. Each moment of vulnerability was a brushstroke in the paint of her own life, of everyone's life. She was determined to reflect. "What if we turned our fears into our canvas?" she continued. the weight of her words gathering momentum. What if we allowed our pain to be our palette? That's where we find strength. Strength to face what we fear most. You struggle as artists, but what if your struggle is also what makes you human? A wave of warmth washed over her as the audience shifted, a mix of curiosity and contemplation evident on their faces. This was no longer her solo performance. It felt like a shared experience of unveiling lost dreams, both her own and theirs. In that moment, leaning into the vulnerability instead of retreating from it felt like stepping onto a tightrope, balanced between the thrill of connection and the fear of exposure. Would her words resonate, or would they dissolve into a sea of disinterest? The silence that followed was a pendulum swinging, hanging between hope and doubt, both potent catalysts for change. But then, a familiar voice broke through the tension. A different classmate, the one who had initiated the wave of doubt earlier, stood up, her brows furrowed but her tone softer. Okay, let's say we try this. What if we're just not good enough? What if no one sees what we see? Ellie's heart slammed against her chest. The fear exposed itself again like a specter lurking in the periphery, but she grasped for it instead of letting it go. She couldn't sidestep this very question, for it struck home. What if we aren't enough? Maybe we'll fail. But isn't it our responsibility to at least show up? We owe it to ourselves. Whether we create something grand or find ourselves in a mess, it's still our journey. We aren't just seeking validation. We're seeking to share with one another, to breathe life into our existence through our work. The exchanges of uncertainty among the classmates rippled outward. Ellie could see their struggle, their hesitation, mirrored in her own past. Here was the real art. The push-pull between fear and bravery, self-doubt and self-acceptance. As the lingering echoes of her words faded, Ellie felt a small but satisfying shift, a kind of acceptance thrumming in the room. She became aware that this was not merely a discussion about art. It had morphed into an exploration of identity, a test of personal limits and a challenge to grow. A subtle smile creased her lips. It felt strange yet liberating. The space she occupied no longer belonged to judgment, but a growing understanding that every artist in the room wrestled with similar insecurities. Just as relief began to wash over her, her eyes caught a glimpse of a figure in the back, Benjamin, the silent observer, who had never engaged before now, and yet his presence felt charged. With an expression that blended contemplation and determination, he stood up too, and as Ellie locked eyes with him, she felt something shift yet again, what lived within him that was ready to break free. The atmosphere simmered with the promise of his movement, a potential moment where Ellie's burgeoning vision of community could begin to unfold into reality. Would their shared fears crystallize into a foundation they could build on? She knew she had a choice to make, a decision leading into uncharted territory that beckoned from the horizon. Ellie inhaled deeply as Benjamin took a hesitant step forward, his expression a mixture of surprise and resolve. The room collectively held its breath, anticipation like electricity in the air. What would he say? For a fleeting moment, Ellie worried that her surge of courage had set the stage for confrontation rather than connection. Yeah, but what if we do expose ourselves and no one cares? Benjamin's voice broke through the tension. What if we lay everything bare and just reveal nothing at all? It's easy to talk about taking risks, but it's another thing entirely to risk failing in front of everyone. His words struck a chord, reverberating through the hall. Ellie felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had faced her own insecurities and fears, but in that moment, being confronted by someone who echoed her feelings forced her to double down. Why do we equate failure with the end? She countered, her voice steady but quietly fierce. What if it's part of discovering who we are? Yes, it's terrifying to expose ourselves, but maybe, just maybe, we find something profound when we dare to show our vulnerabilities. Not every story needs to end in success. Sometimes, those stories are the ones that teach us the most. There was a resonant pause, a shared silence where multiple realizations seemed to occur in tandem. Ellie could feel the energy shift again, not necessarily in unison but layered with the complexities of individual emotions. Heads started to nod, some whispered contemplative remarks, and Ellie basked in the raw honesty of the moment. She was no longer an island. The conversation stirred a collective current that demanded exploration. How do we know we want to take that risk? A girl from the back piped up, her voice trembling slightly. I mean, what if it breaks us instead? That question hit deeply. Ellie's mind darted back to her own prior experiences of taking risks, of sharing parts of herself she wanted to keep hidden. It was painful. There were moments she felt shattered and questioned if any of it was worth it. What if those very pieces we break open are the ones that will help us rebuild into something more authentic? As she spoke, a warmth blossomed within her, not just a sense of community but a recognition of mutual struggles binding them. Each crack, each flaw, became a part of the identity they forged together through these shared fears, a tapestry of human experience. Suddenly, Benjamin took another step forward. What if we actually tried? If we failed, we failed. But maybe we can catch glimpses of our true selves in the process. His admission felt like an ember igniting the suppressed dreams in the room. Ellie noticed something shift within her. The confrontation transformed into an exploration of possibilities. This wasn't just about sharing fears. It was about growth and how they could turn those fears into tools for progress. She realized she didn't need to have all the answers. She could navigate the journey alongside them. I'll go first, she declared, biting her lip as she pondered what came next. Let's create something together. As imperfect as it may be, whether it's messy or beautiful, let's share our pieces with each other. We can critique, yes, but let's uplift as well. What do we have to lose? A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The excitement began to bubble up again, pulsing with an energy that felt distinctly different from earlier. Ideas started to surface, glimmers of inspiration forming in the minds surrounding her. Ellie felt her direction begin to solidify, her grasp on her purpose navigating deeper than surface-level artistry. As the discussion progressed, small groups began to form, conversations sparking in dynamic exchanges. But in the corner of her vision, Ellie could see Marjorie leaning against the wall, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Ellie, don't you see? Marjorie called out, breaking in when there was a lull. What you've started today is far more than a classroom project. It's an awakening. You've ignited a fire. Ellie's chest swelled. Yet buried beneath that swell was a gnawing apprehension. What kind of awakening? Would this truly lead to significant change? Or was she just caught in the rush of the moment? Suddenly, an idea struck her. What if this awakening unveiled hidden traits within each classmate? Would they fully harness them or leave them dormant? With renewed vigor, she posed the question. But before they could dive in, she caught a glimpse of Benjamin, his brow furrowing in contemplation again. What lay behind that expression? The potential for unexpected insight stirred within her, a burgeoning curiosity to unearth even more connection, where courage and honesty would flourish. Would they break through barriers to discover the reservoirs of hidden talents, or would fear stop them in their tracks? The weight of the room shifted as Ellie realized the following conversation would not merely address their present. It posed an inquiry into their futures. The stakes had risen and she could taste the possibilities on the horizon. What road lay ahead for them all? As the conversation whirled with vitality, Ellie felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was more than just dialogue. It was the crucible for forging identity. She sensed the urgency, a collective heartbeat pushing her to delve deeper into the minds of her classmates. What had begun as a vague plan to empower through artistry had morphed into a quest for authenticity. Let's start small, she suggested, her voice steadying. Each of us should share one hidden talent or a passion, something that truly means something to us. The momentum hung in the air, anxious yet thrill-laden, as if the room were poised on the edge of a cliff over a vast uncharted sea. One girl tentatively stood up. I like painting, but I've never shown anyone. What if it's not good enough? Ellie, recognizing the self-doubt, responded swiftly. Your art could reveal parts of you that might inspire others. We aren't here to judge. We're here to expose the layers beneath. She felt the nerves buzzing within her as she offered this reassurance, aware of her role in both encouraging and creating space for vulnerability. Next, a boy with a quiet demeanor confessed, "I write poetry, but my words are just for me." The flicker of vulnerability sparked something within Ellie, igniting her to share as well. "I love storytelling," she interjected, her heart pounding as she continued. "But I've always feared there's no audience for my stories, that they're too personal." The admission poured out, and Ellie felt exposed yet unburdened. As stories began to unfold, more voices emerged. Each revelation added richness to the dialogue. Ellie's sense of purpose sharpened with every confession. There was magic happening. Her classmates were not just sharing talents. They were peeling back layers of shame and expectation. Amid the dialogue, she noticed Benjamin again, his expression shifting uncertainly as though he was battling a tempest of his own thoughts. The vulnerability he had displayed previously had morphed back into skepticism, and Ellie felt a tug to understand what weighed him down. "Benjamin, what's on your mind?" she asked, eyes intent and inviting. The room fell silent once again, anticipation swirling through them. Rubbing the back of his neck, he admitted, "I don't think I can show what I can do. What if I fall flat? I mean, what right do any of us have to share our gifts?" His hesitation resonated along Ellie's spine like a lingering chill. But what if that same fear is what holds us back? If we never try, we risk never knowing what we could become. Maybe together we can catch each other when we fall. The sincerity in her words seemed to ripple, breaking through the fog of Benjamin's doubt. You can't predict your impact. Sometimes the smallest flutter can create the biggest currents. As her words hung in the air, the spirit of connection prompted Benjamin to nod, though still uncertain. "What if I try to play guitar?" he finally said, and the murmurs of support began to fill the room like a balm. With each new revelation, Ellie felt the formation of a tapestry, an intricate weaving of hopes, fears, and aspirations, where every individual thread was essential to the whole. She might have ignited a spark, but it was their energy that built a bonfire. The clock ticked mercilessly, and a flicker of time pressed down on them. With a mix of anxiety and excitement, Ellie knew that this was just the beginning. How could they channel this vulnerability, and what would arise as they deliberated their next steps? As the group began to discuss possibilities for a collective presentation of their newfound talents, Ellie's focus sharpened on what lay ahead. She sensed an inevitable shift toward intent. Could they push this beyond mere words into something tangible and transformative? The magnitude of her ambitions began to bloom, but Ellie felt the weight of her own fear creeping in as uncertainty loomed. What actually was at stake? Would this experimentation reveal their strengths, or would it mean facing the harsh reality of inadequacy? As ideas exploded, collaborative art pieces, poetry recitals, interactive storytelling, she realized that the path forward wouldn't be easy. Each new layer of creativity would demand confronting their fears, possibly unearthing painful truths. But deep down, Ellie understood that their exploration could yield more than they anticipated. The conversation turned into a serious brainstorming session, tinged with tension and excitement. The stakes felt alarmingly high, but could courage become their bridge? Ellie noticed a shift within herself too. The bashful artist who once shielded her truths was stepping aside for someone ready to embrace the challenge ahead, uncertain of the outcome yet fully committed to the journey. Would they rise to meet this challenge or succumb to their fears once again? Changes stirred on the horizon, brimming with potential. What awaited them as they ventured into the unknown, where even the faintest flicker of authenticity could ignite a profound transformation? The brighter future awaited them as Ellie stood among her classmates, the excitement in the air thrumming like an eager heartbeat. Each of them had taken a step rooted in vulnerability, sharing bits of themselves that had long remained hidden. The fragile connections formed in those moments became scaffolding for dreams yet unimagined, transforming their shared art project from a simple showcase into a celebration of resilience. Days turned into weeks, and as their collective journey unfolded, Ellie found herself nurturing Marjorie's artistic endeavors alongside her own. Together, they orchestrated a multifunctional art exhibit that intertwined their stories. Marjorie's experience as a widow and Ellie's coming-of-age revelations had become inseparable strands of creativity. The exhibit represented more than an artistic expression. It was healing. Each brushstroke reflected shadow and light, demonstrating how pain could twist into beauty. Ellie felt herself evolve. She was no longer teetering on the precipice of caring what others thought. Instead, she found solid ground on which to stand, still pushing the boundaries of her own expression. And then came an unexpected invitation. A local community center wanted to feature their exhibit. Ellie's heart raced with disbelief. This was vindication for both her and Marjorie. Their work, born out of empathy and shared narratives, was finally ready for the world to see. On the night of the exhibit, as Ellie beheld the vibrant installations lining the walls, something within her shifted again. The once quiet girl, who had battled against the fear of judgment, now stood confidently in the light of recognition. People moved reverently from piece to piece, drawn into the depth of her story as woven through Marjorie's artistry. Ellie felt an exhilarating surge as conversations erupted, revealing connections among strangers who found pieces of themselves in their work. "Ellie, Marjorie, this is so powerful," a visitor marveled, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "I can't believe you created this together. It speaks volumes." Ellie froze, the words washing over her deeply. Recognition, real and deserved. Marjorie stood with her eyes glistening, a hint of disbelief mixing with recognition in her expression. "We did it," she whispered, her voice steady with pride. "We showed our truth." Eventually, as the night waned, several attendees approached Ellie and Marjorie to share their personal reflections, some even expressing how the exhibit inspired them to explore their own creativity. With each story exchanged, their hearts swelled against the backdrop of laughter and encouragement. Ellie reveled in the realization that she had not only transformed, but helped transform others with her experience. She had discovered courage and vulnerability, the kind that rippled outward and encouraged others to confront their own hidden talents. This, she learned, was a profound achievement. With the exhibit closing and the future spreading before them like a canvas waiting for paint, Ellie felt the solid confidence in her chest solidify further. No longer shrinking from vulnerability, she had proven that kindness and authenticity could foster authentic connection and growth, both personally and collectively. Recognized for her artistry, Ellie had finally grasped the truth. It was in embracing both the joy and the pain of the journey that they reclaimed their voices. Grateful, she turned to see Marjorie glowing with newfound purpose. Each of them had risen, not only from the shadows, but into the brightness of recognition and achievement. "Are we ready to explore more?" Ellie asked, excitement bubbling forth. Marjorie nodded, her face radiant. "Yes, let's continue to share our stories, together." As they began to brainstorm their next project, Ellie felt an electric thrill course through her veins. She had achieved a solid foothold in her confidence, and recognized her competence as an artist. This was the launchpad for a brighter future, filled with creativity, connection, and an unwavering passion for exploration. Their journey had not only fostered individual development, but also created a legacy of empowerment, a testament to the transformative power of art and human connection. Now, if you found this story inspiring and want to witness more journeys of growth and resilience, you need to subscribe now to the channel. This is the moment to show your support and ensure you never miss out on exclusive emotional stories that will move and motivate you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a spark of hope. And remember to leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this incredible content flowing. What are your thoughts on Ellie and Marjorie's journey? Comment below with your reactions and theories about their next steps. Your voice matters.